Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Thursday, February 27th. I'm Elizabeth Arcalian. Comedian Paula Poundstone has been performing in front of audiences for decades. You might know her as a panelist on NPR's popular news quiz show, Wait, Don't Tell Me.
I think I learned probably 30-something years ago, maybe, that what I really wanted to do in terms of being on stage was just be more and more myself.
Now she'll be on stage here in the Valley this weekend. More from her and her tour in just a few minutes. But first, these headlines. The American Civil Liberties Union and the United Farm Workers have filed a lawsuit over immigration raids that took place last month. KVPR's Crescencio Rodriguez Delgado reports the raids by federal agents targeted Kern County.
The three-day operation launched in Kern County in early January sent shockwaves through the Valley's immigrant community. Agents with U.S. Border Patrol say they targeted violent felons when they arrested nearly 80 immigrants without legal status. But advocates with ACLU and the UFW claim that number is closer to 200. They also say many were farm workers and did not have criminal records. Dozens of those arrested are now in Mexico, separated from their families. The organizations say the operation was, quote, brazen and unlawful. The lawsuit names DHS Secretary Kristi Noem and 3 officials with Border Patrol. It demands DHS comply with constitutional and federal laws in its operations. The suit also comes just as the LA Times reports the Border Patrol operation was conducted without prior knowledge given to the then Biden administration. For KVPR News, I'm Crescencio Rodriguez Delgado.
Members of Congress questioned the Lieutenant General of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers this week. William H. Graham was asked about water releases made by his agency last month in Tulare County. At least 2 billion gallons of water were flushed out of 2 reservoirs after an order by the Trump administration. Representative Mike Levin of Oceanside told Graham those actions eroded local trust.
You have a lot of work to do to regain the trust and confidence in local farmers, local stakeholders, scientists, and all of us that you're going to follow common sense and facts rather than an executive order that contradicts those things.
Graham did not provide direct answers to questions except to say he follows the agency's statutory processes. A Kern County businessman has declared victory in a special election to fill a vacant assembly seat. Stan Ellis looks set up to represent California's Assembly District 32. That's the seat formerly held by Congressman Vince Fong. As of the latest count, Ellis was leading with 63% of the vote. Ellis issued a statement on Wednesday thanking his supporters. His outright win means there won't be a general election for the seat. A Montana man who threatened to assault former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy was sentenced on Wednesday to 4 years of probation. A jury convicted Richard Rogers last year of threatening a member of Congress and harassing the FBI. Prosecutors say a year before, Rogers made more than 100 calls to McCarthy's office in a single day. Rogers told prosecutors he'd been upset over a situation involving a foreign spy balloon. He said the calls were a form of civil disobedience. The judge in the case did not sentence Rogers to prison because he did not act on his threats.
Looking for a way to support KVPR but can't write that big check at the moment? What about that old unwanted car in the driveway? Your vehicle donation could net hundreds of dollars for KVPR. It's easy. We'll tow it away free of charge, KVPR gets a check, and you'll get a receipt for your taxes. And we can take RVs, boats, and motorcycles too. Find out more at kvpr.org/cars or call 855-277-2346.
And now to our main story. Paula Poundstone is a comedy legend who's been performing since the 1980s. You might know her best from NPR's news quiz show, Wait, Don't Tell Me, but she also performs stand-up and even acts. You might have seen clips of her on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson or The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. She even voiced a role in the Inside Out movies by Disney Pixar. This weekend, you have a chance to be up close to Paula as she makes 2 stops on her comedy tour. First, this Friday in Bakersfield, and then Saturday in Fresno. To give us a preview of her show, Paula recently joined our producer and fan, Jonathan Linden, for this conversation.
A lot of our listeners, of course, probably know you from Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. And so I was curious if you could give us some insight in what you do to prepare for the show. I did check that stat website, and by the latest count, you've now been on 266 episodes, so a lot.
Wow, that's over a long period of time.
Oh, yeah.
I started 23 years ago, I think, something like that. It's really fun to do. I'm so, lucky to get to do it. Okay, so I do watch the news, but I do anyways. You know, the thing that trips you up on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, is the news of the weird. I mean, generally speaking, I know the broad strokes of the major stories. There are times I just plain choke and I say the wrong thing, or or I just can't think of what it is in that moment. But it's usually, I try to keep this sentence in my head for use in a tight spot on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me when I'm trying to answer a question. I try to keep the answer lemurs down his pants.
I know this reference. This has been from like 10 years ago now, right? It was with NPR's political reporter, right?
There's a lot of animal smuggling stories. Often catch the eye of the writers for Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. I mean, they're real. Those are the real stories. Is that somebody was caught by the TSA, and what were they doing? And the answer is putting lemurs down their pants. It happens more than one might think.
Paula, you've been doing this for a long time, since the 80s. I'm curious, how have you found yourself adapting your comedy as you've progressed through your career?
I don't know if I have exactly. I think that, I've been at this for 45 or 46 years now. And hopefully as a human being, I might have evolved a little bit. I'm not certain. But so probably my act would reflect that a little bit. But I think I learned probably, 30-something years ago, maybe even 40 years ago, that what I really wanted to do in terms of being on stage was just be more and more myself. And that oddly takes a little bit of doing. And part of the reason I guess I feel that is, what are there, like 1 million comics now?
There's a lot, yeah.
And we're all gonna, the truth is you can only talk on the subjects that other people can relate to, or no one understands what you're saying. And therefore, we as human beings, as comics, talk sometimes on the same topic. People make fun of us because we all talk about being on an airplane. But in fairness, for many of us, it's, a big part of our lives. So I finally sort of released myself from feeling like, oh, I can't talk about this or I can't talk about that because I might be duplicating what somebody else says. And instead, I just make sure that everything I talk about is from my own perspective. And although I don't believe the theory that we're all so terribly unique, people go, we're like snowflakes. No two snowflakes are alike. Really? Who did that study?
Did they study all the snowflakes?
Yeah. I mean, that's such a ridiculous thing to have. And yet, I'll bet we've all heard that before. And everybody accepted it when you first heard it. Like, oh, yeah, every snowflake is different. They are not. They couldn't be. It's a little teeny tiny thing. And it melts before you can even really look at it carefully. So, of course, we're not. But same thing for human beings. So, we do have a lot. We have much more in common than we have differences. But I do feel like so long as I'm doing it from my perspective, I don't really have to worry about, any of that other stuff that would. Like in the old days, if I was doing a show and there was other comics on the bill, I would feel the need to watch and listen to everything they said so that I made certain that I didn't duplicate anything they were saying. And frankly, I got so bored of watching other people.
Yeah.
that what I say and the way I say it is close enough just to me that I don't have to worry about that.
There you go. So you have 2 shows coming up here in the Central Valley. Could you share with our audience what they should expect when they show up and see you?
Well, there's not going to be any of that mosh pit kind of stuff. So don't worry about. Yeah, I know. A little disappointed. Well, what do? I talk about, what I'm thinking about. I talk about, raising a house full of kids and animals. I don't talk about my kids as much as I used to because they're grown now. And
I did notice, it just in our chat here, people can't see you, but you had your cat and dog come up to you. So it seems like pets are a big part of your life.
They are. I have 10 cats.
Oh, my gosh.
That little black cat that you just saw, I don't usually let the cats into my bedroom, but I brought it in because I have a pot of beans on the stove. And I went in the kitchen to stir the beans. And that little teeny cat, and by the way, she's 10 months old. She just hasn't grown. That little teeny cat was sitting on the stove beside the cooking beans. So I assumed that she was cold. Took her off the stove, and I brought her in here to sit in front of the space heater with me.
Okay, that's good. We don't want a burnt cat.
And I really have always felt before that wasn't anything to worry about because I'm like, well, they're not stupid, but I might take it back on that one cat. So I have 10 cats, and I have one big giant dog that you can see here. She's part golden retriever and part Newfoundland. So yeah, I talk about that here and there. I talk about the travel that I do. I talk about, what it was like growing up when I grew up. A lot of my audience is my age or older, but I'm talking about it to talk to the audience members that are younger, to explain to them why we're, not quite how we should be.
Oh, so before I let you go, Paula, you've done a lot in your career, TV shows, you've published a book. Is there anything else that you have coming up in the future that our listeners can keep an eye out for?
No, I have a podcast. And you know why I have a podcast? Because I am a human being. When you're born now, you get a social security number and a podcast. It's great.
I do love your podcast name. Nobody listens to Paula Poundstone. So
Yeah. And it's here's another thing that doesn't separate it from the pack. It's a comedy podcast, which I believe there are 2 million of those now. But it's a comedy podcast. We share real information. We pride ourselves in that I think is helpful for people living in the adult world. But it's a comedy podcast. It's a great companion, I think, for people as we get through all that we have to get through.
That was our producer, Jonathan Linden, speaking with comedian Paula Poundstone. Tomorrow, Paula will perform at the Nile Theater in Bakersfield, and on Saturday, she'll be at the Tower Theater in Fresno. And that's today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
Each morning, it's a new opportunity, a chance to start fresh. Up First from NPR makes each morning an opportunity to learn and to understand. Choose to join the world every morning with Up First, a podcast that hands you everything going on across the globe and down the street, all in 15 minutes or less. Start your day informed and anew with Up First by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.